you're still here. Thought you might have slipped off to the green when the mist lifted, but no, you've got that look of someone who stays, listens for something. I haven't said much to you today. The trees haven't asked for words, just steps and time. There's a bend in the path west of the village, past where the brambles grow, tucked into the moss and underfoot. You'd know it if you'd ever followed the hush instead of the road. That's where I walked, and I think something there remembered me, even if I'd forgotten it. Want to hear? I think it would like to be told out loud. There's a bend in the Willowbrook path where the trees begin to change. Their trunks grow wider, thick with age, their bark folded in ridges like softened cloth. The usual willow silver deepens here into duskier shades of green-gray and bone-brown, as though the trees have begun to forget their color and remember something older instead. The roots rise above the earth, not sharply, but with a slow curl, looping and braided like ropes laid down by memory. The lantern keeper stepped lightly, not out of fear, but of reverence. No one had spoken of this place in years, not directly, but its presence had always hung around the edge of the village's remembering, like a thread tucked into the hem of a sleeve, like a tune you didn't know you knew until it caught the back of your throat and refused to let go. They hadn't planned to walk this far, but the land had invited them. And when the land speaks that way, quiet, clear, without asking for answers, you listen. The air changed first. It grew thicker, cooler, but not with damp nor shade. It was a change in weight, in attention. The birdsong dimmed to near silence. The usual rustle of the wind through the leaves stilled, and the trees decided, without warning, to hold their breath. Even their footsteps changed sound. No longer the familiar tap of boot against soil and root, but something softer, as though the ground itself had begun to listen. They passed beneath a hanging canopy of fronds that reached low, brushing against their shoulders like threads drawn across cloth. It felt woven, intentional. Time moved strangely in the hush. There were no clear landmarks, no turns, just the path winding a forgotten river, leading them deeper into a quiet made not of absence, but of memory. It smelled of old bark, rain-darkened moss, pressed herbs in a long-sealed drawer, and under it all, something sweet, like dried apple, or wild honey soaked into the stone. Near a willow, grown in 3 spiraling trunks, with a hollow heart wide enough to shelter a child, they paused. A flickered tug at the edge of their noticing. There, tucked into the crook of an exposed root, another braid, old, weather-worn. Its once bright green thread had faded to the gray of river glass. The rosemary sprig tucked at the base had dried to dust, brittle and bone-pale. But the form held, each loop, each twist, still shaped by hands that meant it. They bent to lift it and stopped. A single coarse strand was bound within the braid, tied to the heart of it, grayed, thicker than the others. They brushed a fingertip across it, recognized the texture, their own. They sat back on their heels, not startled, just still, because this braid had not been left recently. The moss beneath it had grown through the curve of the rosemary, and yet they had no memory of tying it, not here, not anywhere. But their fingers knew the knot. They knew the pattern, like a lullaby hummed once in childhood and never quite forgotten. They didn't take it with them. They didn't need to. Some echoes don't want to be carried, only acknowledged. So they smoothed the braid gently, retucked it against the root, and whispered a thank you they hadn't meant to say aloud. From there, the path grew stranger. The trees leaned closer, arching overhead until the world felt entirely green and gold. The trunks bore faint markings, circles, spirals, twists like braided patterns carved not by knife but by time, shapes that rose like stories told again and again until they pressed themselves into the bones of the wood. The lantern keeper traced one, lightly with the back of their hand. It pulsed faintly beneath their touch, not with magic, but with memory. They did not speak, did not draw, did not reach for the notebook in their satchel. This wasn't a place to record. It was a place to remember. Time passed oddly after that. It might have been minutes or hours. They crossed a shallow rise where the ground dipped in the middle, just enough to gather water in rainy months. The soil here was darker, soft with decay and root. Ferns grew tall around its edge, swaying gently in wind that did not reach beyond their stems. At the center of the dip, resting in the shadow of a fallen bough, was a cloth, threadbare, moss-softened. They approached slowly, knelt, brushed aside the fronds. A sampler. Old, fragile, damp in the corners, but intact. And stitched, still visible despite the fading, was a single word: return. They held it. The willows stirred, not all at once, not in a breeze, but in recognition. A shiver ran through the grove, soft and slow, like breath released after being held too long. The lantern keeper didn't speak. They simply pressed the sampler into their chest, closed their eyes. Somewhere a crow called once again. Not loud, not near. Still known. They turned to go, moving slowly, carefully, as though stepping out of a woven space that had only just loosened its hold. Light returned gradually. The green gave way to gold. Birdsong returned in small pieces, first a wren, then a low cooing from somewhere near the brook. They did not look back, not because they didn't want to, but because the hush of the grove still held their breath in their sleeves and in the soles of their boots. And to look back would have been to ask, when all that was required was to carry. They reached the edge of the cottage path by late afternoon. The sun felt warm and slanted across the windowsill. A faint breeze stirred the drying lavender, and the whisper light by the hearth blinked gently on its own. No match, no spark, just presence. The sampler was unfolded and placed on the table, not beneath the notebook, not beside the braid, but between them. A hinge, or maybe a bridge, a single word held steady in soft, uneven stitches. Return. The birds are back. That's something. Funny how it clings, isn't it? That kind of stillness, it doesn't weigh on you exactly. It just stays with you, follows you through the rest of the day, like a thread caught on your sleeve. Yeah, I'd say you had to be there, but you were, weren't you? Whether you meant to be or not, if you dream of willows tonight, don't be afraid. They're not watchers. They're memory keepers. And they've been waiting a long while to be seen again. I'll be here next time, if you want to sit a while longer. Leave the gate as you found it. The quiet knows the way.